This week on the show, we have Metal Gear historian and model researcher, MetalGearDmodel. If you're enjoying the show and want to help support it and get access to bonus content like our uncut live listen and recording sessions, make sure to check us out on Patreon at patreon.com/KojimaFreak.
You're talking about like your kids, managing your kids loving Metal Gear Rising memes. I don't know if D model like goes through that or how his relationship with his kids is regarding them and Metal Gear.
I haven't initiated them yet. I'm doing the baby steps right now. They're getting into Super Mario Brothers Wii and Mario Kart, and my son is just barely getting into Legend of Zelda, which I feel like is the first step to the Metal Gear fandom.
That is a good gateway. Zelda's a gateway drug to Metal Gear.
You know, OSP.
Yeah,
secure weapons on sites. Like it's all there.
It really is all there. Shit.
isn't that one of those terms that Jeremy came up with and then it just stuck?
I thought you guys. I know that because of the episode you guys did.
Yeah.
He was the creator of OSP. Yeah.
I had no idea that the translators could contribute so much.
And Codec, which is in Death Stranding, which is pretty hilarious.
I cannot wait to talk about Death Stranding. Fingers and I talked about it a little bit, and he said we absolutely have to bring that conversation into the podcast.
Yeah, he had a pretty funny understanding of it. Hey, I'm Fingers.
Yo, it's Apache Smash.
Hey everyone, this is Days Ahead.
And I'm Nitroid. You're listening to the Kojima Frequency.
It's probably best if we don't do a video component because you guys, I don't know if you guys listened to Shaine's podcast when I was on there, but there was a lot of like, you see this model part in my hand?
Oh, perfect for audio podcasts. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It probably played very well to everybody.
Right.
I still wonder if we should do that at some point. Like, is that worth it?
It's so much harder to edit, but
Yeah.
because then all those like silence gaps that I take out, all of a sudden it's like we're like jumping in place all of a sudden to like another frame, and it's like cut.
That's where you fade to black.
I mean, also you can't really cut anything out.
Exactly. It's just a different format. That I mean, we could figure it out, but it would be a different way to do it.
I just don't want to do my face for recording.
Yeah.
Like it's like real comfortable being in PJs and sweatpants and a hair tie.
You could do like a VTuber thing.
That would be funny.
Oh yeah, they did actually just introduce like VTubing, a VTubing looking type thing, and Zoom, like enterprise Zoom. So I've been doing sort of the VTubing thing in my company meetings, like when I don't have makeup on. It's weird.
Okay, so then here's the question. Could we figure out how to adapt models from various Metal Gear games into VTubers?
I would love to be the integral / VR training mailing model.
Hmm.
The like high at the time polygon.
It's a good thing there are no old people here. They'd be totally lost.
Like, what's a VTuber?
It's like
Is that where I get my medication through?
It's like you remember like Otacon? Like you played MGS2, right? I just want to like because they were like he hasn't played some of the games and it's always a
me?
crapshoot. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I've played all of them. Yeah, well, I played all the canon ones.
Okay, so basically, just imagine Otacon's little figure in the little codec photo audit deposit upload thing. That's kind of a VTuber.
God, that'd be easier than 3D models.
You're talking about the auto clock, right?
Yeah, the auto clock. What is it? I forget. Does it have a particular name? Like Sprite?
Auto clock, I think.
I know that's the name of like the clock, but the name of the actual little model and the photo uploader.
I'm not sure, but if somebody wants to animate like a little cartoon Metal Gear D that like acts like that, I would love that.
Yeah.
Now you got me thinking, because that would be way easier than rigging a bunch of 3D models. Because you'd have to rig the mouths and set up. Oh man, it would be a lot of work. I mean, you could do it, but doing like Otacon style pixel art would be a lot easier.
Well, yeah, you would just need like 4 or 5 different like animation frames pretty much for like the different mouth positions, and then just fucking shuffle those around.
Yeah, and then I wonder if like I could set hotkeys so that you could get different reactions for the hotkeys. So instead of showing our faces.
This is a great idea.
Yeah, we basically just want Metal Gear Solid 2 codec avatars as our podcast. That'd be great.
Yeah, though if we went the 3D model route, then we could actually put them into a codec screen.
As long as we can zoom in on them and make them have auto console like freak out face thing in Metal Gear Solid 1, then we'll be all good.
Okay, but you're not allowed to hit R2 and know what I actually think.
Okay. God, I hate Metal Gear Solid 4.
You know, I was thinking about that the other day. It was a joke that Days Ahead had made. Where you said you did a playthrough of Metal Gear Solid, and your gift to Nitrite, I think for his birthday, was that you made a Metal Gear Solid 4 not canon by letting Meryl die. And I was thinking about it. I'm like, you know what? That could render Metal Gear Solid 4 not canon, because you could let Meryl die and play 2 and 3, and it's a complete story, and it makes 4 not canon.
No, well, a few loose ends, but I would say they're subjectively loose ends.
It's one of those things where it's like some stuff in 4 could still be canon. Big Boss is still out there. Zero's still out there, but Meryl and basically the plot of the game's not out there.
No, oh my god, I haven't streamed in a while. I'm sorry, everybody. But yeah, I now remember that. And then like DRK was also streaming Metal Gear Solid 1, and Meryl Living had won the MGS2 or MGS1 streaming bet. So that was also kind of another reason, like, I gotta buck the trends for that day. And of course it was Nitroid's birthday, so.
Maybe Konami would be open to that. Maybe they could do a Metal Gear Solid 4 Redux. Where it's like, okay, this is what Metal Gear Solid 4 would be if you give in to torture and Meryl dies.
Give it sort of like I was thinking sort of like the Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood treatment, where it's a bit refined. I don't know if Nitroid would still like it though.
I mean, there is alt universe stuff already. I mean, I know you said you've only played the canon games, but spoilers for Ghost Babel if you haven't played it. And
you know what? I'll be okay. Yeah, the spoilers for the Game Boy Advance game. Go for it.
It's it basically considers that Metal Gear 1 happened, and then it's it skips Metal Gear 2, and it's hard to explain.
I was aware of that. I got the impression that it was sort of an alternate Metal Gear Solid, that Metal Gear 2 didn't happen, and I know that it's centered around like the remains of TX-55, right?
Yeah, and there's also like an interesting little tidbit they throw in to the extra material that talks about how Snake is actually Big Boss's biological son. So the whole cloning thing's dropped.
I've been thinking about this a lot, actually. We'll probably get into this in the podcast too, but like, so they're talking about doing like a series of Metal Gear Solid movies, and it's like, gosh, like whoever you cast, like, don't they have to play Liquid Snake? And don't they also have to play Big Boss and Solidus?
I don't want to think about it.
Well, we've discussed this before, but if this film is directed by Paul H.W. Anderson, that's not going to be a problem, because Mila Jovovich has already played, clones in a video game movie before. So
well, no, she'll play the new character who has a whole new name, and then Solid Snake will sort of be like her sidekick.
Yes, that's exactly
just, like,
what we
poses
said.
And looks pretty in sneaking suits, but doesn't really do anything.
Yes, that's exactly the case. She's gonna have the whole Snake's the less infant terrible's plot. And Snake's just gonna be the side character. As you can tell, we've had this discussion a little too many times. So
yeah, I'll try to steer me clear of any discussions you guys have had too many times.
No, I mean, we're all for it. It's branding, right?
I'm mostly worried about, I don't want to repeat too much stuff that I'd said on Shaine's podcast, so I'm trying to think of like new angles of approaching the material that we'll talk about.
Admittedly, that's sort of where I'm trying to like not repeat anything from there either.
Well, I thought on Shaine's podcast, I went into depth about like how I got involved, how I got interested in the Metal Gear D model build, but like we could talk about how it was actually built and who was involved.
Well, for anybody who hasn't heard that, can you give us the Cliff Notes version?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So you haven't listened to my episode?
Shout out to Shaine and the Mother Base podcast.
Yeah, so
Go check that out.
Shout out to Shaine. She is amazingly wonderful. Nitroid, you're actually doing the next episode, right?
I am.
And then Days Ahead, I think you're doing the one after that?
I am?
There was sort of, it was hinted at when Apache was on there.
I've volunteered because I remember Apache talking about us in our ridiculous like Discord sessions. But yes, I will get back to Shaine on that.
Yeah,
Awesome.
we've all got an upcoming slot on that show. So
None of us have a choice. It's just happening.
You're coming on
You gotta extract him.
We willingly chose it though.
for sure. Shout out Shaine. Shout out the Mother Base podcast.
Cliff notes on how I got involved in this. Like, it was after I Beat the Phantom Pain came out. It was about 2017. I was trying to. I'm a little bit of an amateur artist. I'm not terribly good, but I'm okay.
Could have fooled me.
Yeah, seriously, dude.
If I put a little bit of effort and work into something, it would look halfway decent. So, like, my entire life, I've wanted to draw a comic book. I've always thought that would be an awesome way of blending artistic skill and storytelling skill. So I needed an artistic style to try to emulate. So I said, well, I'm going to try to emulate those old Nintendo video game manuals. When you look at them and you'd look at River City Ransom or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And the guy who did Scott Pilgrim versus the World kind of emulated that artwork. So I thought, okay, well, I was thinking about the image of like Solid Snake smoking the cigarette, and behind him is the silhouette of Metal Gear TX55 and like different soldiers from Outer Heaven. I'm like, you know what? I really like that image. Let me see what other artwork is in the manual, and maybe I'll try to emulate that artistic style. And I grabbed all the images I could from Metal Gear, and then I kind of looked at Metal Gear 2 and started grabbing images from it, even though it's clearly like a different artist, different artistic style. And then I ran across a post Nick Darrington had done on junkerhq.net on their message boards. And he had posted a handful of photos of those marketing advertisements for Metal Gear D that appeared in like MSX Fan and MSX Magazine.
Yeah.
And he posted some pictures from the Metal Gear 20th party. And he basically talked about, hey, I knew about these model kits from Japan in the early 80s. And I thought maybe they use those to make this Metal Gear D, because he'd recognized the spotlight that kind of has that little cover on it. And you can only like see like a strip of light coming out the middle of it. He said, I recognize that spotlight cover from these model kits. And sure enough, it's there on Metal Gear D. So he looked through the 21 models and recognized that the Croat model kind of had the legs of Metal Gear D. And there wasn't too much more information than that. He was trying to stir up interest. I'd actually connected with him on Twitter this year, and we'd had a brief conversation. So he was trying to create interest, but at the time he said, well, you know, fandom on social media wasn't as strong as it was now back in 2013. And it just is kind of a project that, you know, he didn't really complete. And if you look at his Twitter page, I mean, the dude's super talented. He's just constantly posting like fan art that he did of like comic book, you know, different comic book characters. So he's a dude that keeps himself really busy and is constantly moving forward, but he loves Metal Gear. He's built several of the model kits before. He's even built a little model kit of Mach 2 from Snatcher.
Yeah, I think I've seen that.
Yeah, and it's like he reached into the game and like pulled out a 3D model. It looks amazing, and he built it from scratch.
And stuff's so intimidating. I still have my Metal Gear Rex Kotobukiya model in the other room. Just like I like opened it and just saw the little pieces, and it's like, all right, back in the box you go. Like,
Yep.
Same.
Also something I need to stream.
I haven't gotten mine yet. Nitroid kind of let me know when they went up for pre-order, and I went back and referenced that email. It's like, you should get this in May of next year. And well, May kind of came and went, and I
Oh, jeez.
haven't got it yet.
we actually got it from like we all ordered it from a pretty sketchy place, and then happened to all get them pretty promptly. So except mine that ended up in customs, but that's another story.
Yeah, didn't we get ours from like the United Arab Emissary or some shit like that?
Yeah.
We got it from the UAE, and
Yeah, UAE.
it didn't seem legit at all.
That's how I was like, man, I do not trust this website, but we will get our refunds. I guess.
Sorry, it's not embassy, it's Emirates, United Arab Emirates.
Yeah.
Is that the website you gave me, Nitroid?
No, that was a more legit.
Oh, okay.
outlet
Yeah,
that I
it
gave
seemed
you.
more
No, we
official.
all
It
took a
didn't seem that
collective
sketchy.
risk when we got ours.
Yeah, that was before they brought back like the pre-order stuff. Like that was what we thought were like the last ones, but then they did another run, and we were like, God damn it!
Well, we got the MGS4 version of Ray, which I don't think they ever made any other versions of Ray. And we got the black version of Metal Gear Rex.
Yeah.
There's no other model kit for Metal Gear Ray coming from Metal Gear Solid 2?
Not from Kotobukiya, no. Not that I think. Correct me if I'm wrong on that, but I think that was the only one they did because it was.
I know they had the
easier.
toys. A buddy of mine had bought me Solid Snake when Metal Gear Solid 2 came out, and it like came with like Metal Gear Ray's leg.
Yeah,
and
the McFarlane figures.
Yeah.
And I like that because it's got the tail, and the MGS4 version doesn't. So.
Did they remove the tail?
Well, yeah, because it's if you look in MGS4 when Ray shows up, when the original Ray shows up, it doesn't have the tail.
You know, I wanted to talk about this too on the podcast. I don't know if we should save it or not, but Metal Gear Ray is designed to be an anti-Metal Gear. And in Metal Gear Solid 4, it's in perfect health. It's never been damaged. It's the one that, Ocelot took from the boat, the Discovery. And he goes up against Solid Snake in the most busted Metal Gear Rex that was so busted that Liquid abandoned it. And Snake wins.
It's a repeat of the whole thematic element from MGS1, where technically Liquid's superior, but Solid wins. Don't be defined by your genes, etc. It's mirroring that.
I'll take your word for it.
MGS4 is very for as literal as the answers are. The game is very non-literal. It's kind of strange. It's a rabbit hole of a conversation.
I mean, there are also some like store brand things that are just like, I would say objectively better than, the good brand. This might have been an example of that, but who knows?
You're probably right.
They don't build them like they used to.
Yeah, you could also say that.
Then you got Sahelanthropus that's just like, what the fuck?
I mean,
I can't even pronounce that properly. I have to say ST84.
It's funny. There's a meme that I've seen make the rounds where it shows like you've got the Shagohod, and then you've got Peace Walker and the AI mechs, and then you've got Sahelanthropus, and then fast forward and you've got the TX-55, and there's like Big Boss standing there complaining about the budget because it's so much smaller.
Yeah.
I feel like I've had those conversations with my wife.
Oh no,
but honey, I need this amount of money to make a Metal Gear D. That was just a joke. She's been very supportive.
That raises a question though. How much of an investment is it to get everything you need to build this thing?
That's a good question. I have 4 model kits, and I wish I'd done my estimates. I know I need to buy another model kit again because Metal Gear D has 4 toes, and I only have 2 of the toes. So I have to buy that model kit. So you actually need
multiple of the same model kit just to pull this off.
That's right. Unless I were to maybe take some molds and then like melt the plastic rims of the model kit into the molds. But that feels like cheating.
It feels like you're trying to make the authentic, like you're trying to make it like they made it.
Yeah, I'm trying to make it exactly like they made it. So everything I'm using predates 1990. So I'm buying model kits that were manufactured in 1984, 1985, and were never opened, never touched.
Hold on. So I know I had talked to you sort of in private before a little bit about this, and you mentioned that the company that made those kits had a name change, but they're still producing more or less all of those kits, correct?
Basically, yeah. Are you guys familiar with kind of this Japanese modeler, Kao Yokoyama, I want to say, or something like that? He's the guy that he's done a lot of different model kits and he's been involved with them. But basically, there's this magazine called Hobby Japan, and in 1982 he started to do these like custom model kit kit bashing builds. And he in the magazine, the article it was under was called the Wonderful Junk Kits. And then very quickly after that, in 84 and 85, they started putting out these SF3D original model kits. They put out 21 total. And then suddenly they were hit by some kind of a lawsuit because I don't think they did the copyright or trademark correctly. and they stayed out of print until like 1997 or 8.
It's really funny to me to think about like Metal Gear D just being like a kit bashed like nuclear weapon. They're like, all right, well, we'll just take this from this piece and take the thing from this tank over here.
It's pretty funny. It's pretty funny.
So, just to follow up with what I was going to ask you, the reason I asked that was because you mentioned that these are old model kits. So you didn't buy the reprints. You managed to hunt down the actual kits that were made at that time.
That's absolutely right. I mean, you can tell the difference because the new model kits, I don't know if you guys know the name. I call them MA.K.
Yeah, I've seen them.
Yeah, that's the new name that they go under. After the lawsuits were all settled and they, this model creator got the rights and everything, he started producing them under a different name, under a different company, but they were the exact same molds. They were the exact same instructions. I know because I have the Croat model kit from 84. And I also have his reprint of the Croat from 97, and they're identical. The parts are laid out exactly the same. They're the exact same size. The instructions are exactly the same. The only thing that's different is instead of called SF3D Original, they're now called MA.K.
How in the hell did you find those?
I wish I had this amazing story for you, Nitroid. I really do. Whereas, like, I went to Tibet and I had to go undercover, but I just got on eBay.
3 years with the monks and then a very rare pre-order site up on the mountain.
I just got on eBay, and if you type in like Croat on eBay, you might find like 7 Croat model kits, and I was always looking for the one that was kind of the cheapest price.
All right, so what is Croat?
Croat is German for frog.
Ah, okay.
Now, in the model kit line, they basically have a bunch of armored suits where it looks like old-time divers that would have those like bubble helmets on.
Okay.
But 2 of the 21 model kits are like mech models. Another 2 of the 21 model kits are like jets. And most of the rest of them are just kind of like powered armor suits. But Metal Gear D uses parts from all of these things, from the jets, from the power suits. The Gustav is one of these power suits. And mostly the Croat model. It uses almost every single part from the Croat model.
Ah, okay. Let's see some pictures here in chat now.
So how many model kits in total do you need to make this thing? I know you also said something to the extent of not everything in the Metal Gear D model comes from a model kit. They had to do some work themselves.
That's absolutely right. Because I spent a lot of time looking at the Metal Gear D model, and I'm like, you know what? That head looks so darn good. I feel like that must be an official model kit that they like turned upside down or backwards or like cut a head in half. But after like a year of looking into that, I'm like, no, you know what? It's just modeling clay that they put on the Croat head and sculpted it into that lumpy design that everyone loves.
That's kind of funny.
Lumpy.
Yeah. Now, it's got a lot of parts embedded in it. And once you know what's clay and what's the Croat head, you completely understand how they like took these hooks and like stuck them in the clay.
So ultimately, that'll be the only one that you'll essentially have to have a mold for if you want to ever reproduce this.
Yeah, I do.
More than once, I mean.
I do want to reproduce it, but honestly, with my second build, I want to use the Ashley Wood 3A Croat model kit, which was actually a 1/12 scale, so it's almost twice as big.
Oh, geez.
So if I do that, I'll have to do the mold again. But then, yeah, in theory, after that, if I build any more 1/20th scale, which is what I'm doing now, which is what they did, or 1/12 scale, I might be able to make a mold of the head and then reproduce it identically if I'm satisfied with how it turned out.
That would be insane.
Yeah, it's going to be quite the chore. And I was talking with Fingers. Fingers was like, "Well, you must be some kind of a you must be some guy that grew up making model jets and, had a lot of experience making models." And no, none. I'm not a model builder. I'm just a Metal Gear fan.
If I'm recalling right, Rex was made somewhat similarly, though, with more custom work. Is that about right?
You're absolutely right. If you look at some good photos of that Shinkawa Rex model,
yeah,
which I absolutely love, by the way, if you kind of know what you're looking at, you kind of like, yeah, you know what? It seems like he did a lot of like, maybe he did a lot of sculpting in clay. I think somewhere they talk about the process because I feel like I've caught wind of it where he sculpted it in clay.
Yeah.
I think they, cook it or whatever, or they let the clay dry, and then they make a negative mold of it, which they then pour like vacuum, some kind of plastic or something, vacuum formed plastic in the molds.
Yeah, I think he actually talked about that in the. I could be wrong about this, but I think it was in the official mission handbook, the U.S. strategy guide for MGS1.
That would be cool to look into. I don't know if anybody's ever done that before, but I think it would be possible. I think what should be done, and Nitroid, you were kind of showing some interest in doing this for Metal Gear TX55, but someone needs to try to reproduce that that Rex model as like a 3D render. I think it could absolutely be done because there's pictures of their wireframe model online.
Yeah, and that early wireframe model was back when they were doing FMVs for the cutscenes rather than in engine. And at that point, if I'm remembering right, Rex in the game still had the cannon style arm rather than the railgun.
That's right. They were producing commercials where there's like all this smoke and steam around Metal Gear Rex. And I think maybe early gameplay footage or something like that. But I can't remember what the publication is, but it actually shows the pictures where they took his model and they photographed it from the front and from the side and from the top and from the back. And then they put that into a computer and basically created a 3D wireframe model that was identical to those photographs from different angles.
Yeah. Now,
and that wireframe model can be found online as a 2D photograph. And I think it could probably be used by somebody that's good with 3D rendering to make a new 3D render that we have access to.
Yeah, and with the photos that are available, there's enough to extrapolate from to get something pretty close to accurate.
Yeah,
I think so. And I've identified a couple of parts on Metal Gear Rex, the original model, that came from the model kits that I have. So we could measure those parts and then go, okay, this part is a pretty big, pretty chunky part. If it's, I don't know, 38 millimeters, then we can apply that to the rest of the model and know how big Shinkawa's model is.
Yeah, it's not too big.
Yeah, it's pretty small. It's pretty small. It's just a hair bigger than the D. And it's on a wooden platform, so it might actually be like the same size.
I mean, there are shots of them side by side and next to pieces of paper. I think there's even one of Shinkawa holding it, so that would give you sort of a decent idea. But it would be interesting if you could find the few pieces that he did use from those kits. But it sounds like he was just grab bagging from anything he could find, so that's probably a lot harder.
Yeah, I found some of the pieces. I found one. There's like one that's basically like the calf muscle of Metal Gear Rex. I found that.
Ooh.
And on its backside, it has a couple of like cylinders that are up underneath the back of Rex's head. And I found those too.
Oh, dang.
So if you were to
You're
measure both of those,
man. I don't know how you're finding these. I've seen some of those.
It was a total accident.
This is
basically,
honestly becoming a lesson on information literacy. Because,
no, Days Ahead, you're absolutely right. I mean, the way I think of this is visual information. And I've been thinking a lot about like, you see those like U2 spy photos of like the Cuban Missile Crisis?
Yeah.
And you look at them and you're like, how the hell did anybody look at these photos and see these like micro dots in the photo and go, those are ICBMs. And those are the trucks that hold ICBMs. And this route and the way they have everything set up is a nuclear launch site. It's like, how the hell could you tell that? Well, doing what I've been doing for as long as I've been doing it, I kind of get it now.
You just get like familiarity with like what's there and what's different.
With all the parts.
Yeah.
When you have the model kit parts in your hand and you're looking at a blurry...
Well, there's probably also some inference, too, based on the context of, like, okay, well, I know this is there and I know this sort of looks like that. So even if I can't visually make out X element, there's only one or two things it could be. Which one makes more sense?
That's a good point. Like, how much of this, going back to, trying to parse the information you need to build this model, how much of a percentage would you say came from, just looking at documentation? How much came from knowledge that you had of the game? How much came from like referencing, artwork? Like how would you break that down?
That's a really, really good question. None from the game, really. There's not much you can get from the game. I got a little bit from the game. The kind of pseudo 3D wireframe model of Metal Gear D?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a time very early in the project where I had no understanding of what the right side of Metal Gear D looked like, because that's the only side that doesn't have an illustration. And for a while there, I couldn't find any good pictures of the right side either. Now, there are people who have tried to 3D render Metal Gear D, and you can find those online, and there's about 5 or 6 of them, and they always get it wrong. And I would look at them and go, well, that's clearly wrong. I don't think that's correct, but I didn't know what was correct either, because I'm struggling with the same issues that those guys struggled with. So what I did was I looked at the 3D wireframe model, or the pseudo 3D wireframe model, and the part specifically that caught my attention was the right armature that holds the 6 missile pod.
Mm-hmm.
You can get a really good look of like how that thing is and what it is and how it works in that like 3D wireframe model. I'm like, okay, that's basically like a number 4 that's made out of flat model parts.
If I remember right, the arm, the missile bay, that also kind of had some changes to it. Like in some of the marketing photos, they show it having a cannon on it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I wanted to make sure that everything I did was uniform to what was out there. So I did tons of research myself, and all the guys that are out there that we kind of go to for information that kind of really know their stuff, like Archound, and there's a group of them, like
Bad
Lord
Humans,
Emmerich.
and, yeah, all those guys.
Yeah, Bad Humans. All of those guys that talked about it with the cannon arm, because I just would have referred to it as how Nitroid did. I would have said, well, this is the alternate configuration with the cannon arm. But they would refer to the cannon arm configuration as Metal Gear D revision. So I said, okay, well, I want to make sure that the information I put out there is uniform with what's already out there that predates me and my involvement with Metal Gear D. So every time I post a photo of it with the cannon arm, I say Metal Gear D revision.
Cool. I wish more people would do that. It makes things a lot easier.
You don't want to go, well, I want to put my stamp on it. I'm going to make the definitive name. I'm like, fuck that. No, I want people to be able to do their own research and know what Metal Gear D revision is, because people who have been talking about this longer than I have, that's what they called it. And
also, because if you have all these different names, it's impossible to do any research on. I mean, stuff, we've talked about it on the show before, but stuff's disappearing on a daily basis.
Exactly. Stuff is disappearing on a daily basis. And that's what I've been struggling with, is that nobody that's posted photos of this thing online have labeled those photos Metal Gear D.
So, like, how do you manage that? Like, you know, is there any like standard that you guys have put forth? Is it just kind of ad hoc and just things kind of naturally were naturally sort of organized? Or
is this in general or about the Metal Gear D project?
About the Metal Gear D project. Like you're talking about making sure that all of your documentation and all of the model names were correctly referred to, like the correct models with their specific components and whatnot. Like, how do you manage keeping that standard and in such a small, like, for lack of a better term, because I don't want to sound insulting, but for such a small, like, less organized community?
No, I mean, that's a very good point. I mean, as you're talking about what you're talking about, I can't help but think about like the probe that NASA launched to Mars and it just crashed into Mars, because it was a joint project between like Europe and America, and they were using the metric system and we were using whatever system we're using that screwed up. And so like we were putting in feet and yards, and they were putting in like meters and kilometers, and we were putting in miles, and like, so it just completely fucked up the computer and it crashed into Mars. I want to make sure I get those type of things right, but there's no team here. It's literally just me. Just a one-man operation, and I do tons and tons and tons of research before I'll speak on something as an expert. So I really wanted to make darn certain that I knew my stuff inside and out, that I sort of knew what the standard was, because I mean what this whole thing is about is that, I mean, you guys know this too. There's not a lot of information out there on Metal Gear D.
No.
There's not a lot of photographs of it. There's not a lot of information on it. It seems like at some point somebody would have photographed it from every angle and put it on a CD-ROM disc in like 1999 for like Metal Gear fans to look at and enjoy. But
you know, it's on the subject of standardization. I kind of I have an interesting example within the Metal Gear community, and something that I actually in my foolish youth contributed to, which is kind of funny. But
go on.
Well, okay, so early on in the Metal Gear Online community days, rewind back to the, early 2000s or so, when fan sites were actually active, and there were not soundtracks readily available. There weren't streaming platforms. If you wanted soundtracks from the game, you either had to record it from the game yourself or get lucky importing it from somewhere. It just, there wasn't really a clear way to do it, right? And so a lot of people would for the music that wasn't on official soundtracks that managed to make their way over here, they would record stuff from the game as clean as they could, usually analog, rarely digital. They would tag it as best as they could, come up with names, maybe even make up their own fan art for the album cover, you know, and like you've got...
So like they would pull the first track from a game and they go like Metal Gear 2 intro or something like that, or Metal Gear 2 Infiltration Begins.
Yep.
Exactly, yeah. And there's a bunch of these fan soundtracks, and the old fan sites used to do this all the time. It's a lot of fun, you know? But it did create sort of a weird issue where now a lot of track names are referred to names that aren't really official. And Ghost Babel is my fault, specifically.
I was going to say, aren't you responsible for that one? I remember you telling me that. You're like, yeah, you like those track names? Guess who wrote them?
Yeah, so if you look up like Ghost Babel soundtrack on YouTube or on like game, like, you know, RIP websites or wherever, you're going to see a bunch of track names, right? And I made all those up. Just as I tried to come up with names that I thought sounded like what you would see in MGS1, and they stuck. And now everybody uses them.
That's kind of cool.
Sorry.
That's culture, man. That's art from adversity.
I guess, but I feel bad about it because it's not at all official.
Don't feel bad about it.
You filled a void.
Days, I actually wanted to address your point. You're like, well, there's so much stuff out there. Like, how did you make sure it was uniform and all that? The truth is, nobody's done this before. Nobody's tried to. Well, you know, Nick Darrington kind of got started, and I'm aware of somebody else that actually bought the Croak model kit because they knew it made the Metal Gear D, but nobody's done the research and then made it public. So there's not a bunch of other guys that have done this that I'm like, well, I need to make sure this matches, like, you know, what's his face, and Archound did the right arm, and I need to make sure it matches, you know, Archound's research. There's nothing out there. It's just an empty void for me to fill. And since I know they use these SF3D model kits, and in Nitroid, I told you this once, I basically figured out that the entire Metal Gear D model was built with these SF3D original model kits. So that's made it a little bit easier for me that I'm not like having to also do research into Gundam wing model kits and all kinds of other stuff I don't understand. If it was like that, which I think Metal Gear G is, I'd be screwed. I wouldn't know where to start. I wouldn't know where to go.
G is a whole nother can of worms, man.
Yeah, we'll get into that. But I think that is actually built using different brands of model kits from different franchises. But Metal Gear D is all these SF3D original model kits, and there are only 21 of them. So it's just a matter of going through each of them one at a time, looking for a part.
So what's the end goal here, other than building it? I mean, because you talk about making it public. So what's sort of like the final end point of this?
The final goal would be to get the information out there. I mean, to tell you the truth, like my dream is that by like within the next year or two to get the information out there officially, make it look really nice, put it together like in a book if I can, and like get it officially released. But I don't understand how that copyright and trademark works for Konami and where I've pulled these images from. I mean, that's probably just a pipe dream that'll never happen. So what I'll probably end up doing is releasing it online as a PDF and just go, okay, here's release day. Isn't this kind of funny? I'm kind of doing what Ocelot did with the Mo disc data on Rex.
I was about to say, it's pretty meta what you're doing here, like, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
You know how the technical specs of Metal Gear were sold on the black market after Shadow Moses?
All Ocelot's doing.
Exactly. And now every state, group, and .com has its own version of Metal Gear.
I regret to inform you that I have no intention of selling Metal Gear. As I said, I came to take it back.
It's a little meta, so that's kind of fun. But releasing it online, and then basically like my dream would be by 5 years from now, I see like fan model builds cropping up left and right online where people are like, I built Metal Gear D. I think that'd be so cool. That's my end goal, to get the information documented properly, each and every part, what model kit it comes from, what model kits you need to buy to do this, get the information out there, and then see fans do these builds from themselves. That's my end goal.
Okay, so it was less of a case of like, something sort of organically going together, and it was more of like, be the change that you want to see in the world.
Exactly. Like I'm a fan of the Metal Gear series. This is something I'm interested in. I would have been very happy if somebody else had taken up the torch and did this so that I could just follow suit and go, oh, that's so cool. I'm going to buy these model kits and make a Metal Gear D using their instructions. But that information wasn't out there, so it caused me to kind of seek out that information. Okay, can I find a few more photos of this thing? Okay, can I find anywhere in any publication where Kojima has talked about Metal Gear D? And slowly starting to collect this stuff and going, gosh, like, no one has ever put all of this information together and presented it in one place before. You go to some like IGN.com and you look up photos on the Metal Gear 20th anniversary party, and you see like, 100 photos, and there might be like 2 photos of Metal Gear D. And that's cool and all, but like, where's the fan website, or where's the central fan location where you can go and all of the visual data on Metal Gear D is located there?
Sorry.
It's on twitter.com/MetalGearDmodel.
Exactly. That's where it is now.
We used to have that, and it's gone now. And it hurts.
I see a lot of parallels, like how you describe this, but it sounds very parallel to sort of Nitroid's initiative with standardizing or documenting out how to mod MGS2 and his like future vision of people having their own mods and there being some sort of standardization.
You're absolutely right. Nitroid gets in there, and maybe he's not the first guy to attempt it. I'm certainly not the first guy to attempt this Metal Gear D model build, but I'm the one who's gotten it the furthest so far, and then tried to make it public, just like Nitroid. He's kind of the first one to really try to roll up his sleeves and get his hands in there and go, look, anybody can do this. Anybody could mod Metal Gear Solid 2 if they would just put in the effort, and here's kind of how it's done, and I'm going to try to put a document together explaining how you can do different things, and then see other people kind of, take up the torch and run with it.
Everybody deserves to play as Fat Man.
Everyone deserves to play as Fat Man, and hopefully by 2030, because of Nitroid, hopefully we'll have Metal Gear Solid 2 play as Vamp. Metal Gear Solid 2 play as Raiden's girlfriend.
I'm gonna interject real quick, because just to be clear, I am a super novice with this stuff. If anything, I think what I could contribute the most is maybe giving this scene exposure and getting more people into it. I'm definitely not the one figuring this stuff out, and everything I've been able to do has been because of other people helping me figure out how to do things that they've already done.
Yeah, but that's where it starts. I mean, when I first started this thing back in 2017, I was like, gosh, this is hard. This is confusing. I don't understand it. I wish somebody else would do this. I don't want to be the one to do this. I understand a little bit, but now I'm not somebody that likes to brag or toot my own horn, but like, I feel like I understand the Metal Gear D model better than anybody on the planet right now.
You probably
even
do.
More than the guy that made it, because he made it like 32 years ago. I mean, what does he really remember?
Well, I mean, I'll tell you this. There is, I don't know much about him, but what you're doing reminds me a little bit of what somebody else just did yesterday, or maybe he reminds me of you, whatever way you want to look at it. But there is a software developer named Boris Laren who just yesterday, out of nowhere, put up a video on YouTube talking about how, hey, I've spent all of this time very quietly reverse engineering parts of Metal Gear Solid 2 so that I can add the subsistence style 3D camera to the game, and it works, and here it is. It's not quite done yet. I guess he's going to be trying to release it sometime within a year or so. But this guy, as far as I'm aware, was never a part of any of the Metal Gear modding scenes. He was just a developer who went, "Hey, this would be cool," and did it. Which is just amazing. I mean, I'm honestly speechless.
I've been a Metal Gear fan since like 1989 or 1990. Like I've been a
too,
part of the Metal
nice.
Gear. Nice. High five, Nitroid.
Finally, somebody else.
I did not exist in 1989.
Yeah, we're old.
I was 2. I guess I might have played Metal Gear 1 when I was 2. I don't know. That's like that hazy period where you kind of just are slamming all the cartridges in.
I was an avid fan, and I've loved it for years, but like I never participated in the community online.
And you don't have to, it's not a requirement for you to do cool stuff like this. In fact, I find a lot of things just kind of pop out of nowhere. They're not, the Metal Gear community can be kind of insular at times, and then all of a sudden somebody out of nowhere will be like, hey, I'm not part of this, but check out this thing I did that you guys have only dreamed about.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Metal Gear has kind of been my private meditation thing where like I play this single player story and I love it. And maybe I talk about it to my brother who's also a fan too, but all my close buddies aren't into it at all. But I started working on this model build and I'm like, okay, I need help. I need help finding these photographs. And not only do I need help finding these photographs, I think this project is special. And I think the Metal Gear fan base would be interested in this project. So I hopped on Twitter July of last year. And it's been an absolute blast, especially since like you guys give me a shout out like way back when I first kind of hit the scene on Twitter and kind of made publicly known.
Yeah, you gave us a bunch of questions that day. I remember.
And we like looked in your profile and we're like, whoa, what the fuck?
Sorry about that, but thanks for the shout out and thanks for answering those questions. I really appreciate it. But like I've been around, but I just haven't been interacting with the community. Like I've never done Metal Gear Online 1, 2, or 3. I just did the single player story on, normal difficulty and then hard or extreme. And then, I would talk about it with my brother and I'd kind of think about these themes and these ideas on my own. But it wasn't until I felt like I needed the community's help and had something that I wanted to share with the community that I wanted to kind of hop online and become a part of it.
Well, we're happy you're here.
Longest lurking period ever.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
On the subject of Metal Gear D, I wanted to bring this up to you. I can't remember if I've ever mentioned it or not to you, but have you ever seen the film Gunhead?
Gunhead? I have not.
Okay. You'll probably find this pretty interesting then. And some of it it's a little bit speculative, but I'd say safely so. It's a late 80s sci-fi film about I guess I'm trying to go from memory. It's been a really long time since I've watched it. But a group of soldiers going up against this advanced robotic AI system, right?
I love it.
And a lot of the imagery is suspiciously similar to Metal Gear 2. And
so you're saying it came out before Metal Gear 2?
Yeah, 89.
Is this the one that has the profile picture of like Holly White?
Yes.
Okay, I think I am vaguely aware of this, actually.
It's even got the wireframe model of the mech that looks, again, very much like Metal Gear D.
So a Kojima influence for the game.
Yeah, it seems that way. At the very least, in the case of Holly White, unmistakably.
That's cool, though. I like when filmmakers
yeah.
do that. I mean, that's what Quentin Tarantino does, is he picks things out like, okay, I like what, oh gosh, I'm so embarrassed. Bruce Lee, I like what Bruce Lee is wearing in Game of Death. I'm going to pull that out and put that on my heroine. And then he does that for like a million other things. And then he mixes it around and has his own story to tell and has his own dialogue and has his own themes. But there's all this iconic imagery around it. That's perfectly okay to kind of remix this stuff and put it back together.
Yeah, I'm not saying there was anything wrong with it. It was just I thought you might find it interesting, and it's a fun movie. It's worth a watch if you can get a hold of it.
I'll check it out. Fingers, I sent you the liner notes to Metal Gear 2. Have any of you guys read the Arkhound translation of those?
I don't think so.
A while back. It's been a while. I don't remember them.
Arkhound has like lower resolutions photos of it, and he's translated them. And basically, like, they're talking about the behind the scenes production of Metal Gear 2. And when they get to the part where the guy who built the models that says, "Oh yeah, we used the Croat model by Nito," it's redacted. It's redacted. They have like the first letter of Nito. They have the first letter of Croat, and everything else is crossed out, and you can't see it.
It's so funny because, like, in Japan you've got the doujin scene where creative works and sort of like, fans taking liberty with things is sort of the norm. But over here, it's not. We don't really have quite the same thing. So it's harder to get that kind of stuff made and sold. Whereas in Japan, it seems it's more kind of accepted.
Yeah.
Like you could publish. I've seen doujins related to Metal Gear before that have been sold openly on websites with no problem. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about that.
It's not you. It's me. It's me. I can't think of that word without thinking. It's okay.
I know what
it's
you're
not
thinking,
your fault.
But you know what I'm talking about, right? Like the fandom in Japan is much more open, and you've got like Comiket where people sell their doujin works. And one of them that I really liked, I'll have to look up the guy's name, but there's a guy on Twitter who made a book that was just a collection of information on all of the fonts used in all of Kojima's games over the years. And it says like in this menu or in this title, in this book, and it's like it's this font, it's set this way. It was like really interesting, and he only did like one printing of it.
Somebody shared a page of that with me because I said, "Oh, did anybody ever notice that Metal Gear 2 has the exact same font as Metal Gear Solid 2 and 3?" And then like somebody immediately stepped in and said, "No, not exactly. Here's a page from that book that analyzes it."
But it does have the same as Snatcher.
It does, but it's italicized in Snatcher, isn't it?
Yeah. And then it's funny because what they ended up using for Sudacher, which was Suda51's directed radio play, that uses the MGS2 and 3 font.
That's cool.
So it was kind of like they both hopped over, you know?
Well, sometimes I just think that information's lost. Like people have analyzed the opening crawl of the new Star Wars sequel trilogy, and they're like, they got the font wrong. Look at the the lowercase a in the original trilogy, and look at the lowercase a in the new movies. It's totally different. And so it's like, who holds this information, and like where's it being kept, and how is it not standardized?
And
that
how
kind of
do
stuff
you
bugs the heck out of me.
Well, another question, corollary to that is how do you document it?
Disney threw out the digital assets when they threw out the extended universe.
Someone dropped the ball over at Disney,
Like,
and I think their name is
dang
KK.
They're like, Kathleen, where did the fonts go? Oh shit.
Sorry. Quick, run it through Find a Font.
Have you guys been watching Obi-Wan?
I've not watched it yet. I haven't even finished watching Boba Fett. I've kind of just stopped watching most TV.
I almost fell asleep watching Boba Fett until they got to like episode 5, and then suddenly it turned into Mandalorian season 3, and I was like, oh, well, this isn't a pleasant surprise.
I've watched 2 shows lately. One is I bought a new soundbar, and so I've been trying to get like good TV in. First thing is I plugged in my parents' HBO Max account, and I started watching The Sopranos. And holy shit, shout out to everybody on Twitter who's been throwing me Soprano memes. Because that community's memes are fucking top tier. Oh, God.
I need to get into Sopranos. My brother was really into it in college, and like I tried. I watched the first episode. It didn't really grab me right away, so unfortunately I didn't really stick with it, but I'm aware of its great reputation. I want to check it out sometime.
Oh yeah, it's as my friends call it, rich in lore. So definitely check it out. But the other thing I wanted to watch, and I kind of wanted to bring this up because Kojima influenced me in watching this, was Stranger Things season 4. Seeing Kojima in his Argyle cosplay. Oh, you definitely have you not watched the season, or have you not watched the show?
Oh, no. I have been watching that. Yeah. I like Stranger Things a lot. I think season 3 kind of was starting to falter for me, but season 4 is definitely like rebounding in my eyes.
Yeah, I was just saying that earlier. Season 4 is definitely like punching back. It's just got really good pacing, and I don't know. It's good again.
I've seen the first season. I know nothing about this show.
My wife's terrified of the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. So
man,
I was fist pumping when like Robert Englund appeared in the new season.
I was like, wait a minute, that's fucking Robert Englund.
It's fitting that he would be the victim of a dream demon.
Yeah, happens.
I don't want to spoil it too much because I know it just came out pretty recently, but I can definitely see why Kojima would enjoy it. It is very derivative, and I mean that in the best way possible. The takes off of like Nightmare on Elm Street and other horror have been fantastic. And as soon as I didn't want to say it was too derivative, but as soon as I saw Robert Englund in that jail, I was like, oh shit, okay, yeah, this is it, okay.
Mm-hmm.
That worked perfectly for me. But then in the very next episode, Dustin references a Nightmare on Elm Street. I'm like, ooh, that was taking it too far.
Yeah. They shouldn't have said it.
You can have Robert Englund in there, but don't say Nightmare on Elm Street the episode after.
Yeah.
Which honestly is also kind of a Kojima thing to be that like blatant. So yeah.
That's true.
And then just sort of like the shift in tone, I can definitely see Kojima appreciating sort of the darker elements, both in terms of like the brutality, but also, you know, some of the situations the kids are going through.
Yeah.
I like how like they were saying Angela was kind of over exaggerated. And I'm like, clearly you kids did not go to school between like 1985 and 2005.
Yeah.
It was
But yeah,
a whole different world. Overhead projectors and slideshows and 8mm.
Shout out Kate Bush. I just want to say that. That
Oh,
song's been
yeah.
stuck in my head the past week.
I can absolutely see Kojima being all about the whole like Kate Bush renaissance and
Yeah.
the whole like, oh, you know, music is the one thing that gets past Vecna.
I love that. I
Absolutely.
love that.
Oh, I'm a sucker for that shit. And I'm sure Kojima is as well. So yeah, I
I've
can
actually got
absolutely see why he's hyped for this.
My Walkman nearby somewhere. But yeah, I need to put my favorite song in it in case I get into a Vecna situation.
I know. I've never been so thankful for like streaming services now, because if Vecna comes today, it's like, oh well, pull that shit up on Apple Music. We'll be fine.
What would you guys' Vecna song be?
Herbie Hancock, Chameleon.
I've thought about this a lot.
I'll go ahead and say mine because of Metal Gear Solid 5. Probably Kim Wilde's "We're the Kids in America."
Really?
I
Okay.
would play the game and just listen to that over and over and over again as I blew people away and rescued hostages and put bombs on trucks and then blew them up a mile away. And yeah, I really got a kick out of that one.
If I were to pick an answer right now, it would probably be like a theme from Final Fantasy 14, to be honest.
Hey, that beautiful music. You know, I used to be a huge Resident Evil fan and Final Fantasy fan too, just like Metal Gear, but over the years, those ones kind of fell off for me, and I stopped following them. But Metal Gear, I never faltered once. I played through all of them.
Well, have you been following anything recently? I was gonna say, as you mentioned Resident Evil, we are like a secondary Resident Evil podcast. Did you see anything, all that Resident Evil shit and the state of play?
I heard about it after the fact. A Resident Evil 4 remake is coming out. Is that right?
Yes,
Which is cool.
Who could have guessed?
But they did Code Veronica dirty.
they did.
They did 3 dirty. I'm still mad about that.
Nitroid seems pretty upset about it on our chats.
I did. God bless them. I loved Resident Evil Resistance, but I did double check online to make sure Neo Bard wasn't touching this one.
Is that
But
the
I'm really
culprit behind Resident Evil 3 remake?
Yes, it is. It was sort of like a B team.
I think they'll handle it a little better because Resident Evil 3 didn't that start off as kind of a spin-off game, and then they're like, well, this is kind of quality enough. We'll just call it Resident Evil 3.
From my understanding, it started off as Resistance, which was that sort of like asymmetrical Resident Evil DBD type iteration. And they're like, shit, like nobody's gonna buy this alone. And then they had to pull RE3 out. But that's the story that I've heard. I could be wrong.
Man, that really sucks. That makes me sad. RE3 gets no respect.
Unfortunately, I didn't have an original PlayStation, so like I played Resident Evil on PC and Resident Evil 2 on PC, and I don't think they released Resident Evil 3 on PC, so I never played it.
Oh, dude, emulate that shit. It's good.
My 2 favorite Resident Evils, and yeah, I wouldn't say they're the best, but they're my favorites. Are 3 and Code Veronica. So of course they're the ones that are getting,
Shafted.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, buddy.
Yep.
I'm so
Yep.
sorry.
Yeah, it's all right. It's all right. I'll tell you what they're going to do. Before they ever consider remaking Code Veronica, they will straight up remake RE1 again in the new style.
I think so. I think after 4, we're going to see 1 again because the remake of that came out around the same time as Twin Snakes, right?
It doesn't need it. God, I don't even think 4
they're-
needs it. That's still a modern game, Like,
It's so funny that like none of us even talk about 5 or 6 being like remade. They're like, what? No, they're not that.
No, we don't wanna
stupid. Like,
talk
they're
about
not.
those.
They're not going to do that. Like,
what is there
I
to
actually
say?
did play
They're bad.
5 and 6 because those were 2-player, right? I think I played those both
Yeah.
through with my brother.
I did have
Yes.
fun with those. Like fuck is they were definitely goofy or whatever. Not very Resident Evil, but they were fun games. Like
They were like Contra with zombies.
Yeah, my wife and I
Yeah.
played through 5, and that was a good time. And then I played a few minutes of 6 on
It was
Leon's
horrible.
campaign, and it's the only Resident Evil. It's the only mainline Resident Evil I have not beaten. I could not stand it. and I've tried to go back a few times. I just can't do it. It's terrible.
It's obnoxious.
Sorry. I'm sorry, RE6 fans. I'm sure there's something there worth enjoying, but I can't find it.
Yeah.
We are getting VR on Resident Evil 8, so
I'm going to play the hell out of that.
I'd probably have a heart attack if I tried that.
I want Alien Isolation in VR, but that's a whole nother topic.
Oh my God, I would totally have a heart attack. And I love the Alien movies. It seems like that'd be right up my alley, walking around on like the Nostromo set, even though it's the
Did you
silver
play
pool
Isolation?
I played a little while into it, but unfortunately, like I played a few hours into it, then just kind of I kind of stopped. And unfortunately, that's kind of who I am now at this point in my life.
Yeah, it drags a bit. It's such a it's weird. Like it's this really tense horror game, but it's also sort of a mood game. It's really weird.
I liked it a lot, but then I saw like people like trashing it because like I don't know, they're like it's just like a door opener where like you just make the numbers on one side match the numbers on the other, and then it opens. And they were kind of criticizing some of the elements like that. But I'm like, you know what? That's something that we can naturally understand. Like we don't understand this futuristic technology, but we can make the numbers on one side match the numbers on the other side to unlock a door.
Especially when there's an alien chasing you. Like, I don't want to think too hard. I'm already stressing out.
Yeah. I don't want to be in an alien movie. That just seems super stressful.
Going back to Nitro's point, I agree. I mean, Resident Evil 4, I'm at an impasse, really, because Resident Evil 4, I agree, didn't really deserve a remake. Or at least it's timeless enough, and I feel the same way about the RE1 remake. It's timeless enough to where it doesn't necessarily require a remake. Plus, there's like 40 different ports of it anyway. But at the same time, I am very, as a big fan of the RE2 remake, I'm very curious to see like their interpretation of RE4, the same way they sort of reinterpreted RE2. That includes, compensating the gameplay in a modern age while still kind of adhering to the overall tone and challenges that you expect from RE4. But also like the characters. Like I think I've blabbered about this in the show before, but I loved what they did with Leon. I loved like how ridiculously naive he was. I love the part where he's in the sewer in RE2 where he's in the sewers with Ada, and he's like, or no, not when he's in the sewers with Ada, but when he's like with Ben in the jail. And he's like, and Ben's like, yeah, we got to take down Irons. Irons is responsible for a lot of this. And Leon, his dumbass, he's like, well, Irons must have put you in this cell for a reason. And now, seeing him all, like, I'm curious to see how they make him, just not hopeless, but cynical and disheveled like he was in 4. I want to see that interpretation.
I've been thinking a lot about Leon lately.
Speaking of cynicism, and Resident Evil 4, do you think Sadler's going to be the new Mr. X? Do you think they'll have something like that? I mean, they've done it for...
actively chasing you, like...
Yeah.
I think... I don't think it's going to be Sadler. I think it's going to be the pastor. What was his name? His name is Vitores Mendez. He was the... because...
Yeah, you're right.
Because the what do you call those? The Nemesis folks? They're always like first act villains. And if I recall correctly, that dude was sort of the first act. So I'm hedging my bets on that guy.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yep. But there's gonna be some sort of a pursuer type.
Now that being said, can you imagine if they made Dr. Salvador the pursued? Just like a chainsaw just nonstop chasing you and you can't stop it. That's the same. Sorry, go ahead.
You should get I can't remember the character's name, but the Napoleon character. What's his he was the stalker type. Just running after you.
That'd be scary.
Salazar.
I regret not taking my brother's advice to play 4 now.
4's fun, man. Like, yeah, I don't know. I think I am kind of looking forward to this remake of it. Like, 4 was kind of goofy too. Like,
I'll play it.
It was fun, and
I've heard nothing but good things about it.
That's as long. Yeah, they got to keep the goofiness. That was what I was going to mention.
It seems like they could improve because, like, it's been criticized, like, afterwards, right? That during the cutscenes, you had to like press X at the right moment. or something like that.
Yes,
To, like dodge
That
a
was
boulder.
sort of
and-
like the
It was-
first. Go ahead.
I was gonna say that was like you Nitro was saying, that was sort of the first iteration of QuickTime scenes.
Yeah.
God of War also kind of stood out with those as well, but that I remember being for like combos and fucking. It wasn't like I just remember the knife fight with Krauser just stressing me out with the QTEs. Like, it was unbelievable. I don't know why. What were you gonna say, Nitroid?
That was pretty much it. They did it better than I would have. I mean, I've talked about my thoughts on RE4 before. I'm one of those weirdos who's not really a big fan of it, but RE4 sort of represents to me the beginning of the end of Resident Evil in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I see what you're
I
saying.
have to admit that's kind of where I lost interest. Even though my brother's like 4 is amazing, you got to play it, and then it kind of went downhill with 5 and 6.
Because I like classic RE. I like that it's scary. I like that it's moody. And 4 went in such a different direction that I just felt like, okay, you've made a fun game, but this isn't Resident Evil to me. At least this isn't what I like about Resident Evil, so I couldn't connect with it. And it wasn't until like 7 that I was like, oh, okay, you guys are coming back around now. Like, that's where I sort of came back in.
Yeah, I love that survival horror element so much, and I know it's because of graphical limitations, but like I liked the locked camera angles and the tank controls.
Me too. I kind of still wish they would have remade RE2 in the style of the RE1 remake.
There would be like a camera at the end of the hall that you'd be walking toward, and you'd hear a zombie shuffling around going, "Roar." And it was scary as hell because you knew you were walking toward the zombie, but you couldn't see it.
There was so much they could communicate with those angles. Like, they would tell you, just by how they would pick the angle, you sort of knew what you were being set up for. And not just in zombies, but in terms of like, okay, this room is going to do this to me, right?
Yeah.
Oh, like a high camera angle would mean like the walls would close in.
Yeah, exactly. Stuff like that. So like
Yeah.
it was always communicating things to you. There was more visual language. Whereas with like a 3D camera, you don't have that director's sort of hand on everything you're experiencing.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Yeah,
much less
forced,
curated.
Yeah, it's like a forced perspective. Yeah.
I don't know what the answer is.
It's funny that you mentioned that because I've as much as I'm really excited for that MGS2 like 3D camera mod, there is something a little off about the art direction that it just feels wide.
Yeah.
Like insert fat man joke here, but like for some reason like the art direction or the textures, there's something about it that just looks wide. And I'm wondering if I'm just like that's just hitting me mentally for some reason because I'm not looking at it at its intended perspective.
That could be part of it. The other part of it, I think, might also be the fact that it's on PC and PC's kind of finicky about the FOV. So
I was thinking that as well.
Yeah, it could. I mean, either way, it does look strange. But we've never seen the game like that before.
Sorry, what were you gonna say, D-Model?
Oh, I'm sorry. I can't contribute much. Unfortunately, I skipped out on 4, even though my brother kept recommending it to me over and over and over again. Like I think of my ideal Resident Evil game, like if they made like a Resident Evil 8, which is coming, probably like a camera that moves with you, like outside, out in the wilderness, out in the forest. But like when you get into like a mansion or a house, lock down those camera angles. I think they work really well to create tension in tight spaces.
Sort of like a hybrid.
Yeah, kind of like a hybrid. I don't know. I miss that. I almost wish like they would do a new Resident Evil movie where they had locked down camera angles. I think it's just really scary and effective.
There is a game that it's an indie game that sort of tries to evoke the RE1 remake, RE0 style, with with actual 3D environments rather than truly static cameras. It's called Tormented Souls. Have you seen this?
I have not.
Give a look at it. It's pretty interesting. It's got a lot of rough edges, but in terms of gameplay and puzzles, it's pretty darn good. And it sort of scratches that early RE style itch.
I'll try to check that out. I'm not so. I've kind of fallen out of the gaming scene. Unfortunately, I'm kind of the guy you bring in when you want to talk about the past. Where I'm like, oh yeah, I used to blow in Nintendo cartridges and put them in. But right now, kind of in the gaming world, I haven't really followed it at all since the Phantom Pain. I haven't even had a chance to play Death Stranding yet. I was telling Fingers what I thought Death Stranding was because I don't know. But to me,
yeah, I wanted to make
I wanna
sure we
hear
cover
this.
that because I know we're a bit at time.
so Death Stranding to me looks like you know how Kojima he like saw Escape from New York, and that's kind of a huge influence on the original Metal Gear, where like you got 18 hours to infiltrate this enemy stronghold
Yeah.
and capture the find this VIP prisoner that they have, and you got to get the data disk and get it out of there, and you only have 18 hours. Go. This is your mission. Well, to me, Death Stranding looks like he watched Kevin Costner's The Postman and was like, "Yes, this is going to be the theme of my next game." In The Postman, Kevin Costner's like in this post-apocalyptic world where he's like a drifter, and I think he finds shelter in like a mail truck overnight, and there's like a dead mailman in it that's like a skeleton wearing his postman uniform. And I think Kevin Costner puts it on for some reason and grabs the bag of mail and like goes to a town where they have like a wooden fence with like spikes, and they're like, "Who goes there?" And Kevin Costner's like, I'm just the mailman." They're like, "We're gonna kill you unless you can pick 3 letters, and if it's not somebody in this town, we're gonna kill you." So then he picks out the first one. He's like, "Is there a John Doe here?" "There's no John Doe. You have 2 more chances."
That's pretty much Death Stranding.
"Is there a Jane Smith?" "There's no Jane Smith here. You have 1 more chance." And then he's like, is there a Rumpelstiltskin?" And then everybody's like, What? "Rumpelstiltskin, will you come forward, please?" And it's this like old lady who's like, "Yes, that's me." And Kevin Costner's like, I have a letter for you." And she reads it, and it's so heartwarming. And then they let Kevin Costner into town, and he's handing out mail to everybody. And then they're like, "Well, the post office is a government office, and there's no government anymore. Is the government coming back?" And Kevin Costner's like, "Yes. Yes,
Yes,
the government is reforming, and I'm a postman, and I'm a government employee, and we're bringing the government back, and we're bringing order back." And it like starts this like revolution
there's-
movement
There's definitely some parallels here. It's like without really playing Death Stranding, I think he kind of gets
where
it.
they kind of restart the government, and it's all because Kevin Costner impersonates a postman.
That movie was like universally panned when it came out.
Oh
too.
yeah, right after Waterworld too. It was like, why are you trying this again?
Hey,
Don't do it.
Look, I kind of like Waterworld. Okay.
No. I bought the Arrow Video Blu-ray and watched it, and it's still garbage 25 years later.
But
I
it's
just-
fun garbage.
But yeah, Waterworld is fun. Like I put Postman down there with like Battlefield Earth. I don't know.
Yeah. Postman's just not.
It's
fun.
got some
It's just
fun
dumb.
production values and some cool scenes, yes. And who doesn't love what's his face as a bad guy? Dennis Hopper.
Oh, he's the best.
He's a wonderful bad guy. But yeah, so Death Stranding to me looks like a cross between the Postman and like the Frighteners.
Oh man, there's a reference.
The Frighteners, like where like Michael J. Fox can just freeze himself in a freezer and be a ghost in the ghost realm, where there's like monsters, and then hop back in his body when he's ready and just return to life. And Death Stranding to me looks like a cross between those 2 movies.
If anybody's not seen The Frighteners, I really recommend that. That was a Peter Jackson film, actually, wasn't it? It was like him trying.
It was the one he made before
Yeah.
the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and it's amazing. It's got Michael J. Fox. It's so much fun. I love it. It's got Jake Busey
Yeah.
in it. It's so good.
Yeah, that is a blast of a film.
I highly recommend it. It's one of those hidden gems from the 90s that I didn't realize was kind of forgotten. Like, not many people know about it.
Well, I'll tell you this: your impression of Death Stranding as the Postman meets the Frighteners is actually pretty.
Very,
Yeah,
very accurate.
That's
Yeah,
Like,
that's
you
about
gotta
right.
mention that on the show.
I don't know much about the baby down what's his face's throat, but for the most part, it looks like It looks like the Postman meets the Frighteners to me,
Yep.
and I look
Yeah,
forward
that's
to
about
playing
right.
it.
You should definitely check it out.
I want to. I really want to, but the difference was like I had my first kid in 2016, so I was able to play the Phantom Pain in 2015, but I wasn't able to play Death Stranding yet, which came out in 2018.
Yep. Welcome to parenthood.
When I had kids, it was like, okay, well, I can't have 7 hobbies. I can only have 2 hobbies, and unfortunately, like video games was like ranked 4th or 5th for me. So I kind of put those aside for a while, and that's another reason why I'm doing the Metal Gear D model build. It's just kind of a way of me celebrating my fandom and kind of looking internally and going, I want to do something to kind of carry that Metal Gear torch just a little bit longer, because I wasn't quite ready for this franchise to go into the grave just yet.
It's admirable, and I want you to have as much support as you need to get this done. I will cheerlead for it as much as you need, because it's an amazing project. If I could give you one piece of advice from one parent to another, get used to locking doors now if you want stuff for this project to not be broken when they get older.
That's a really good piece of advice. I don't have any locks on my doors right now, other than the bathroom, but I'm obviously not putting the stuff in there.
Yeah, once you start the build, secure it. Yep. Well, thanks, MetalGearDmodel. We appreciate you coming on the show, man. It's been a lot of fun. If you want to plug all your social media stuff where people can find you online, you can go ahead with that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. If people are interested in this model build, please check it out. It's not about me. It's not about ego. I mean, really, just as a fan of Metal Gear, I want to see this so bad that I'm trying to make it happen. But I could certainly use a lot of help. If anybody wants to check it out, check me out on Twitter at MetalGearDmodel. And if anybody wants to help out or participate in some way, in all honesty, I think there are more photos of this model to be found online that just aren't labeled in a way that we can easily find them. I think people have gone to these Metal Gear anniversary parties, this Metal Gear 20th and Metal Gear 25th anniversary parties, taken photos and then dropped them on some photo application online and just said, oh, these are my summer 2012 photos. And they're out there and they can be found if you try to look for them. But I could use some help trying to find these photos, because like Days Ahead was saying, it's visual information. And that's what this whole project is about, is visual information and kind of deconstructing it to its core parts, these 3D model kit parts, and looking at these 2D photos and saying, oh, okay, I recognize that model part, and then holding the model part in your hand and saying, okay, that is now a 3D part. So we now understand what that looks like from every possible angle, and doing that for every single, hidden corner of this Metal Gear D model. And then once all these parts have been identified, putting it all together and understanding it as a whole.
It's quite the endeavor, man. It's definitely admirable, and we can't wait to see the finished product. It's gonna be really cool seeing a bunch of little Metal Gear D models running around.
Yeah, man.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me on.
Best of luck.
Yeah, I figured everybody was kind of waiting on me to start building the model, but then I realized, gosh, I can extract so much information from these parts when they're separated.
Yeah,
which is what I'm doing right now. The book that I'm talking about putting together, I mean, it'll be 3 parts. I mean, it'll essentially be part 1 will be the photographs of the original model that I found. Part 2 will just be identifying the parts, which I'm doing right now, and I'm getting close to completion. I mean, I sent you guys what I was working on. I mean, what did you guys think?
It's beyond. I'm honestly kind of speechless, because there's so much detail that you've been able to extract that it's.
It was very thorough.
Yeah, that's a good word, thorough.
Well, anyway, that's what I'm on right now. And then once I really feel like I've ironed that out to the point where, without a doubt, I'm sure that it's correct, I'll start gluing some pieces together, and people will see how it's coming along.
Sweet.
Oh yeah, man. We look forward to it.
Yeah, and I hope that thank you for coming on the show, and we hope that this can help you continue that endeavor. Maybe we can maybe somebody will listen and help you find this info. So
yeah, model builders, hit them up. You might need some help here in a bit.
Yes, model builders, anybody that understands modeling clay or sculpting or spray painting, all these things that I have never done before in my life, I would appreciate the advice. And Metal Gear fans, like I said, if you want to participate, start looking up photos. And I'll tell you right now, it's going to be a lot harder than just typing in Metal Gear D into the Google search engine. The photos that remain out there, that I think are out there, they're well hidden.
Start the hunt. Godspeed, man.
Thanks so much, guys, for having me on the podcast.
All right, man. Thanks again for coming on.